So I always say to people, one of the things I'm grateful for from last year is actually the opportunity to move from CcHUB to becoming a minister, because working as a minister provides a big platform for you to continue to drive the objectives. And it's not something that is given.
I'm Natasha Kimani. I'm a governance and public policy expert and the host of Talk to Me Direct podcast. In this series, I speak with 8 incredible thinkers in Africa, people working to solve complex challenges across the board. We discuss the civic space in Africa, the physical and online spaces where people come together to exercise their rights in shaping our societies. Nigeria's Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, the changemaker turned state official, spoke in this episode about why Africans need to step forward into global conversations regarding technology. What led you or drove you towards technology and the digital space?
Interesting question. I think I'd probably have to go back to my days in university.
Yes, sir.
Probably first degree. I was fortunate to be part of a youth exchange organization called ISEC. And when I joined University of Jos, almost my first year, I got to sign up for these fantastic organizations whose purpose is really to network young people globally behind economic progress and development, really. And we did that through exchange of ideas, but also exchange of people as well, getting young people to travel from one country to the other for internship opportunities, and to be able to open their minds and see how they can support developing the communities or societies around them. I think that was where, that introduction to the power of individual contribution to societal and economic development really came home for me. I became extremely excited about living a life where I could contribute to making the world around me a lot better. And I took that passion immediately, upon finishing university. I took that passion into my job, where I got a fantastic opportunity to join Hewlett Packard in Geneva, Switzerland, alongside International Trade Center, which is part of the UN. It was a very funny, weird internship opportunity for a young Nigerian coming out of University of just living in Lagos afterward. So I got the chance to work on trade, on international trade. But this was a project that was funded by HP and ITC. They were collaborating to look at the possibilities of helping exporters on the African continent to use technology. You can imagine this was back in 2004, so very early days of internet, really. Yeah, so I got the opportunity to work on that important project. I was traveling a lot in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Ghana, and the focus then really was to expose farmers, but also exporters in Africa to opportunity to be able to leverage internet to find trade information, to be able to trade easily. Organic farming was becoming a thing then, so we're also introducing them to it. So there was an element of innovation, technology, but also economic development in all that. So that was truly the foundation for me and what led me eventually to creating CC.
Has the experience of ISEC, is that what unlocked your vision for empowering young Africans? Because that seems to be a thematic trend in everything you've done.
No, absolutely. I think ISEC contributed to shaping my views and interests,
Yes.
if I have to be honest. Because as a young Nigerian, I was born in Lagos, raised partly in Abeokuta in Ogun State, studied in Jos. My family was fairly okay, but I wasn't treated like a child from a rich family. I used to say my dad was one of the people who started what we now know in Nigeria as agege bread, which is a particular kind of bread that comes from a neighborhood in Lagos State. So it was okay, but we weren't treated with that, golden spoon. So things, I went through life like the average young Nigerian person, then leapfrogging from there, on the back of this fantastic organization, joining the HQ for Hewlett Packard, one of the most innovative companies in the world as at that time, and then spending time at the International Trade Center, made me realize how we are all blessed with incredible minds and the ability to be able to create only if we're given opportunities, right? And I got the opportunity, and I felt this is probably the best way to put my skill set to use by building platforms and encouraging young people, but also creatives as well, to build for their society.
Absolutely. I'm going to put you on the spot, Honorable Minister. You've had Pan-African experience.
Yes.
What's your favorite African country?
Oh my word.
It's okay if you say Kenya.
That's a tough question. I think so. At some point, I used to have my favorite African country or city, but I think that's changed over time, depending on what you're looking for. I think if you want to truly relax, feel proper African, and if you're a young person, you just want to have fun, I would say Nairobi, of course, is that city. It's got everything to offer you. If you want to be really proud of what's possible in Africa in terms of dignity, I'll say, Kigali, Rwanda gives you some flavor. But if you want to also truly see how blessed we are as a nation, my take would be Namibia. So you're talking about Windhoek, where you see the beauty and the nature and how unique Africa is as a continent, and which is a reflection of most of our countries on the continent, that we're extremely blessed, beautiful continent, and a lot is waiting for the young people to truly create opportunities for themselves, but also for the entire world as well.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that detailed answer that puts Nairobi at the top.
At the top, at the top of the fun side.
Honorable Minister, you're a social innovator and now minister. What is the one thing Nigeria needs to do or leverage upon to ensure that it uses technology as an enabler for society?
We think we live at an interesting time, right? I think if you asked this question 10 years ago, the answer would be slightly different. But I think today is digital equity. I think access is absolutely important. That people, regardless of where they find themselves, whether they're in a rural area or urban area, rich or poor, I think to a large extent should have access to digital tools and the internet. And the reason for that is connectivity is changing, and it's already changed our lives and society in ways that we can never imagine. There were times that certain insights and knowledge you can only get if you go to really not just get good education, you have to get education at the level of MIT or Harvard. But today there are so many things that people learn in those places that you can learn on your mobile phone without stepping out of your village or your home in a corner of Nigeria or any corner in Africa. There was no clear rating of startup ecosystem in Africa back then, but South Africa used to be in the lead. Nairobi, Kenya will always come on top because it's quite cosmopolitan. It's the entry point to Africa. Countries like Nigeria were nowhere to be found. But today, because of the access, not because the education system is changed all of a sudden, but because of the access, the community has been able to build itself to the point where Nigeria is now anywhere number 1 or 2 at any time on the. And this is also why I'm extremely passionate and bullish about Nigeria, because of the drive that we have as a people, the desire to do better. And I feel like with strong focus on digital equity, what we've seen so far is just a tiny part of it. There's so much more that is coming from this country. And I'm fortunate to be in a position to help influence that.
This podcast has been speaking to a lot of civic society organizations about technology and how it transforms society. But from your vantage point, can technology be harmful to democracy and society?
Again, interesting. You've got loaded questions. No, absolutely. And I think the reason for that is because of the transformative power of technology. When you think of its ability to connect billions of people in ways that we've never seen before, when we're talking digital technologies now. And you also think of the fact that we're now at a very good place where we can process huge amounts of data set like we've never been able to before, which obviously gives us the opportunity to be able to talk about things like artificial intelligence. Then you move to the ability to be able to connect things, machines to machines, but also connect things to people as well. I think you start to see something that has a scope to be able to not only add value to society, but disrupt the way in which we live, the way in which we communicate, and the way in which we do things. And that is where the problem lies, because as much as that's an opportunity, it's also a platform for bad actors to be able to perpetrate so much. So I think it's the challenge that we face as people, but I have a strong trust in also our ability to be able to quickly come together. I think what we need to learn when you look at social media and how social media has been used, platforms like Facebook has been used to. I think we've now learned enough to know that most of these disruptions will also have implications for us as people. And this implication this time around is going to be far reaching. So there's a need even more than ever before for us to start to take governance really, really seriously. I think where you're seeing some commendable effort will be in artificial intelligence, the conversation amongst nations around AI and how to protect it. It may be a bit late, but at least AI is not at a full application stage yet.
Speaking of AI, Dr. Tijani, you were one of the few government representatives in the AI summit in London last year, 2023. How was that experience for you? And how can we ensure that in the future, these global tech discussions are more inclusive of the global south?
Absolutely. I think the AI summit was quite a safety summit. It was quite instructive, I'll say. Let me use that word, instructive, in the sense that in the room you could see genuine interest and passion in people to find ways to make AI work for society. But I think my biggest takeaway is that leadership can't be outsourced. I think if we want an inclusive world in society, people must be represented. Because the nuances of every culture, every economy, every reality will always influence and direct our biases to how we think, what we prioritize. And my takeaway from it is that it's actually quite dangerous for African countries not to prioritize and pay attention to artificial intelligence. Because if we outsource that to the developed world, the approach is always going to be limited to people's perspective and realities in life. And whilst these people may be honest about it, they may not be honest or take into consideration what they don't have any connections to. I think that was what I was saying. You see the conversation for developed countries is already moving more towards safety, which you can tell by the name. I've been to a ton of AI summits and conferences since I was appointed, because it's one of the hottest conversations or topics in the world today. But a lot of it is around securing it, governing it. There's little conversation around how can it be used to drive economic prosperity. And the reason for that is that the developed world is already clear on the role of AI in driving economic prosperity. What the developed world is worried about today is how do we govern it, which is to what you were saying earlier about technology generally. That is a problem for Africa, because if we jump into the advanced conversation of governance without even understanding what we're governing, we're not going to be able to bring our perspectives to the table. What does AI mean for us in terms of economic growth and development? How is AI going to contribute to helping us improve the quality of education, healthcare, governance as the what government is responsible for, and so many other things in society? If we don't have that understanding, we can't bring our reality to the table. The governance proposition that we may have may not be inclusive. One final point on this one: when you look at AI, for instance, the state of development of our, say, media sector in different countries will be different. The ability of a journalist to get the right research tools and support to be able to present thoughts on AI may be different in the UK to the US, or when you compare it to Republic of Benin. And the reality is that there's no future for AI where we're not enlightening our people. That may not be a problem for the UK, it may not be a problem for the US. But for Nigeria, we have to ensure that our journalists actually have a good understanding of what AI is. They can put it into context so that when they talk about it, they can enlighten our people. So something that basic is why I think we cannot outsource leadership. leaders on the continent and around the world need to be active and aware of the importance of this development, and we have to participate. But we're participating from a point where we're truly representing our reality. We're not just participating because we're being invited to the table and we're nodding to everything that has been said. It has to be much more than that.
2024 has been dubbed the year of democracy because of the number of elections that are taking place, not just on the continent, but globally, but specifically for the continent. How do you think social media and technology platforms, including AI, are going to play a role in African elections?
So if we get the opportunity, I think we should actually set up some sort of observatory to track what's going to happen, because I think artificial intelligence is going to also make it a lot more undesirable, the things that we will expect to see. But we're also going to expect a lot of manipulation as well in the use of it. So what's the way forward? I think the way forward is readiness. And I'm not sure if the communities that we typically look up to, which really is again civil society community, is fully ready for what's coming, and there's a need for us to accelerate effort to prepare the civil society communities to technically, this is not just by programs, I think to technically be able to help track and also work closely with governments as well to manage some of these things, because there's a lot of it that governments will need to be the ones stepping up to take responsibilities for.
A lot of African governments tend to shut down the internet and social media platforms during critical moments in history. What do you make of this?
It's interesting. I think it's neatly tied to your previous question. Before joining government, of course, I'll take the position that we'll typically take in the civil society community. But after joining government, I'm beginning to realize that part of the challenge sometimes is shutting down is an easier solution for government. You know, that's the reality. Because it's not all the time that these things are being shut down because there's no evidence of wrong usage. I think in the civil society world, we tend to see government as the only entity with the power to be evil. But that's the sitting government. We don't see the fact that sometimes oppositions also use the same tool to attack government. And what I've seen is that when government find that it is being compromised, you will see the temptation to shut things down. I think that's the experience that I'm getting. And in some cases, you'll find that even when you have progressives within government, it's difficult to make a case to say, don't touch it. You can make that case. And I think the best solution is for us to be preemptive. And that's why I think building government capacity to be able to manage, because there are ways in which you can manage these things without shutting them down.
That would be my next question. Is there an alternative to shutting down?
I think there's an alternative. I think building government capacity. I think when we compare that in certain climes, that internet is not being shut down just because the rule of law and people are progressive is why they're not shutting down internet in the UK. I think we're making false assumption. I think in a lot of those countries is because within government there's the expertise to be able to secure a nation, to be able to track bad uses without shutting it down. And if we focus on empower, and those things come from historical investment in the ability to do so. So historically, I think we're not empowered to be able to, because if government can easily track the bad actors, deal with the bad actors, I don't see any governments in Africa openly shutting down. We think shutdown is largely based on you see a group of crowd protesting, you don't want them to protest. In some cases, it may actually be that government sees that that protest is being intentionally mobilized by opposition. And it doesn't mean that the citizens don't have the right to protest, but people ride off the anger of the citizens sometimes to also attack. And in those cases, if government cannot manage that, then it becomes an issue. Where the obvious solution to them will be to shut down.
Just in line with
this is a very controversial conversation. It's going to be the hottest part of the podcast.
in line with that, oftentimes we find civic organizations not working together with government.
Yes.
They decide to be,
Yes.
but there's room for collaboration here.
Absolutely.
What are some of the ways that civic organizations can collaborate with
The
government?
fantastic example, and people may think I'm saying this because I'm in government. Years ago, when there was an election period, and the INEC, which is the elections authority, came up with a list of voters and where you have to go to vote, but it was in PDF. And we took it at CcHUB and we scraped the content. We built a database for it. Ford Foundation funded this project. And it became a public website where you could go, you put your unique ID, and it would tell you where your polling booth was. And it became so popular. And INEC, which is the government authority, actually started promoting that platform for people to go check where, and eventually they learned a lot from it and rebuilt their own solutions. So I think there's room for collaboration. I'm not saying there are no bad actors in government, but I think we tend to put everything under one umbrella and say, everything government is terrible, you shouldn't touch, when there's significant opportunity for us to actually collaborate with government to improve how public goods and services are delivered.
What do you want to be remembered for 10 years from now, looking back?
There are a couple of things. I think first one for me is to ensure that we drive full development of fiber optic network in the country. I want Nigeria to be covered with fiber optic cables. Because I don't subscribe to the notion that Africa is mobile first. That notion, I think, is limiting. It limits possibilities, it limits potentials. And I think if we have that level of infrastructure to back our digital economy, I think access will become a lot more ubiquitous. And I'm a big fan of when you give access to our people, they'll flourish. I strongly believe they'll flourish. So that's one thing I hope I'm remembered for these 4 years that I'm in office. The other thing for me is talent. I strongly believe that Nigeria has a lot to offer the world when it comes to talent. And I think what everyone is seeing so far is just a glimpse of what's possible. So part of my goal, which you started, is to invest heavily in we're running what is known as the largest tech talent accelerator in the world. We're training 3 million technical talent.
That's incredible.
And it is. So the way to think of it, someone said this to me, a colleague said this to me, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. When you see some of the largest stadium, maybe in the UK, for instance, where it's a Premier League, and you say take a Manchester United stadium and you see maybe 75K capacity, you see how big that is, where when they roll, you see how loud it is. So imagine 3 million people, because that's just 75,000. So imagine what 3 million people are like. It is a lot of people. And of course, I think for me, it's also along the line of that is leveraging that technology talent that we have in Nigeria, that we can quickly accelerate and place Nigeria truly on the map. It's already there. We have our people all over the place when it comes to our contribution to technology development. And that we can inspire the continent as well, the African continent as well. I think there's massive things we can do to do that.
Honorable Minister,
Yes,
as we
ma'am.
wrap up,
Yes, ma'am.
what are the 2 things you'd love to leave our audience with in relation to AI technology and democracy in Africa?
AI, I think the first one for me will be to see them as opportunities. I think when we think of Africa, we tend to see challenges. We see everything as challenges. We see the state of our development as a challenge, as a problem that, we don't like, it's not desirable. I think for me is knowing that the current generation, anyone that is listening to this podcast, that we have a unique opportunity to be part of writing a new story for the African continent, leveraging AI, leveraging technology, leveraging the internet, but also leveraging the fact that we are the continent with over 70% of our people under the age of 30. There are not that many continents in the world with that youth bulge and dividend, that we have a unique opportunity today to leverage all these things, to take advantage of our resources, to create opportunities for our people and also serve the rest of the world as well. So I think we should shift away from looking at what we see as challenges, but a unique opportunity to say, I'm alive now to help build, so that when they write the story of the continent, I'm one of those people who participated in actually helping build a continent.
Dr. Tijani, what music are you currently listening to?
Oh.
What's keeping you going right now?
So if you look at my Apple Music right now, I think it's a mix. I've gone back to mixing things up. But one that I was really stuck on for a while would be the last album from Ashake. Yeah, it's someone I truly enjoy his story, the way he's been able to come up in a very short space of time right from Nigeria, but he's been able to take on that global not appeal, but project himself to be someone that anybody from anywhere can actually enjoy. And when you listen to his music, you actually find that there's a lot of Yoruba in it. So without necessarily changing who he is, he's been able to bring his own side of the world for the world to enjoy.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time. I leave feeling inspired and ready to change my
so.
world.
I hope so.
I have had a fantastic conversation with the Honorable Minister Dr. Bosun Tijani, Nigeria's Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. Thank you for your time, Minister.
Thank you so much.
Nigeria's Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy spoke in this episode about why Africans need to step forward into global conversations regarding technology. In the next episode, we speak to Irene Mwendwa, who is doing just that in technology advocacy in Africa. Follow and subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts.